All right, everyone, welcome to our Section 4 review. This section, we're covering a lot of fiscal policy and multipliers. Covered some of the review stuff in class, so we're kind of covering the later half of the review. No one wanted anything covered before question 40, so we'll be kind of starting on 41 and going from there. So let's go ahead and start with question 41. This one, we're using these two graphs, and it says, assume the economy depicted in panel A is in short run equilibrium at 81 and SRAS 1. So that's going to be SRAS 1 and 81. So right here at P2, Y1. If the economy is left to correct itself, so automatic correctors, that deals with sticky wages. So what we have here between YP, potential output, and Y1, recessionary gap. Recessionary gaps means unemployment is too high. If unemployment is too high, wages are sticky. So wages stay high, but eventually wages start to fall. As wages start to fall, short and average supply is going to increase. Remember, that's a determinant of short and average supply. And as short and average supply increases, it'll get us back to potential. It's sort of like if we went from SRAS 1 to SRAS 2. So knowing that, the correct answer is lower wages will result in a gradual shift from short and average supply 1 to short and average supply 2. Well, there you go. Right what I said. All right. Moving on to the next one, we want to cover 42. So leaving the panels there, it says, assume the economy is depicted in panel A is in short equilibrium at real GDP level of Y1. That's exactly where we were on the first one. Doing nothing and letting the economy correct itself, so it's essentially the same question. Wages are going to fall, supply is going to increase. Let's look at this. Oh, and this one is, it occurs in the long run as wages fall. So remember, wages are what is the self-correcting mechanism. If unemployment's too high, unemployment falls and aggregate supply increases. If unemployment's too low, because we're producing beyond potential output, like over here, none of these have it, then wages will rise, firms hire fewer people, making unemployment go up until we get back to potential. So remember that aspect. All right, let's go ahead and move on to number 46. All right, number 46 says, in response to a negative supply shock, the government decreases taxes. The most likely result of the government decreasing taxes is, so fiscal policy, government cutting taxes. Remember, fiscal policy always shifts which curve? Aggregate demand. So as we look at 46, we can see that it'll call it, so as aggregate demand increases, you'll get a decrease in unemployment because if aggregate demand increases, output increases, therefore, you'll need more workers to produce. So decrease in unemployment and increase in the aggregate price level. Yes, aggregate demand shifters. I don't know if we want to just, yeah, there we go. So if we're doing aggregate demand shifters, we know that we can have our, if we just kind of do our Y, if we increase aggregate demand, remember what happened to price level? It increased, and what happened to output? It's going to increase as well. So go there, that's what's going to occur. That's this question essentially. All right, as we move on, we're going to have 48. By the way, any questions about those? All right, so number 48. It says, the nation of Franklandia is experiencing a short-run equilibrium where unemployment rate is higher than the natural rate of unemployment. All right. How, in the long run, how will the nation's nominal wages, real output, and price level change? Okay, this one's a lot easier than you probably think because the key here is in the long run. In the long run, our long-run average supply curve is vertical, which means it doesn't matter what the price level is, the output level will be a potential output. So if we look at this, how the nation's wages change. In the long run, if there's a recession, okay, so here, actually, let's just graph this whole thing out, make sure we're all getting the idea. So we go ahead and we have our graph here. We have A, D, and we are unemployment rates higher, so we're going to have we're going to have long run. Okay, so if we're producing right about, make that small. If we're right here at price level 1 and output 1, we know that we also have, let's make sure we got this marked right, potential output right here. So we've got this recessionary gap, and we want to fill this gap. So in the long run, we know that short run aggregate supply is going to want to increase. It's going to increase until we get to right here. So it's going to be short run aggregate supply 2. How does this happen? If unemployment's too high, wages get less sticky, people will be willing to work for lower wages because they've been unemployed for so long, and people who had a job would be willing to take lower wages so that they don't become unemployed and end up in that large amount of unemployed people. So wages are going to fall. Well, if wages fall, labor's cheap. That makes me want to hire more workers, and as I hire more workers, I will be increasing how much I produce. So real output increases. And what will happen to the price level? Well, you can see it right here. Price level will fall. So with a recession, we end up with a decrease in the aggregate price level. That'll be the final solution to that problem. All right, is that good for you guys? All right. So then let's move on to 51. Ooh, Keynesian stuff. So Keynesian stuff is not really hard on this. It's actually all we've been covering. So if you're like, oh no, that seems like the thing we're learning about, that's probably the right answer for Keynesian, at least for now. Keynesians argue that a lack of spending is, so on this one, they're talking about, this is an interesting one. So remember, Keynesian does like monetary and fiscal policy. So it's not that one. They said a lack of spending is only evident during expansions. Usually lack of spending is due during recessions. All right, a key indicator of economic boom, no more of a recession, and not possible in the economy. Definitely is, because spending is like your aggregate demand. If people aren't spending money, you have less aggregate demand. So, are they possible? Yes. And can it lead to prolonged recessions? Yes. Remember, that was a key in that song, the Keynes versus Hayek. Remember, it's all about spending. Too little spending, recession. Too much, booms. So that's your Keynesian stuff right there. Which is not that really important to know those. We'll get more into their debates later. All right, the next question we have is 53. All right, there's 53. It said, in the basic equation of national income accounting, the government directly controls blank and influences blank. Okay, so what does the government control when we think of fiscal policy? The answer is the government controls government spending. That's G. However, because they control G and put money in the economy, that can influence investment and it can influence consumer spending. I know I mostly said consumer because that's true, but when we get deeper into this and talk about crowding out, it'll also influence investment due to interest rates. So it definitely controls G, but C and I, consumer spending, investment spending, also can be held true or affected by the government. All right, and we're back to number...
Wait, Mr. Wilson.
Yes?
How can they not control exports? Yeah.
So they can't directly control exports because now we'd have to influence who? Other countries. And then same with imports. How do I get them to make things that we want more? I can make you want more things, but that could be more imports, but also make us produce more and more exports. So it's not directly control it. So they control that, but also influence C and I. X minus M, less so. All right, let's go ahead and move to 58. All right, fiscal policy, good stuff. So 58 says, suppose that the economy is in equilibrium at E2. So right there, long run and short run equilibrium. If there is a decrease in government purchases, so a decrease in government spending on goods and services, decrease in purchases, that would move our demand to the left. So kind of going from 82 to 81. So what will happen when we do this? Well, the answer is average demand 2 will shift to the left, like from 82 to 81. This will cause a decrease in the price level, yeah, because we go from P2 to P1, and a decrease in real GDP, yeah, because we go from YE, potential output, to Y1. So essentially, when you go from 82 and decrease government spending, G, C, maybe even I fall, bringing us over to here, that causes a decrease in the price level, decrease in aggregate output, which would be an increase in unemployment, which isn't here, but would be. All right, let's keep moving along. Next one is 59. So 59, tricky one. All right, so 59 says, suppose this economy is in equilibrium E1, right there. That means there's an expansionary gap, unemployment's below the natural rate, above potential output. So if there is a decrease in taxes, then, all right, so for E1, this is a really good question because they're like trying to trick you, but man, they're directly saying it. If you're at E1 and you cut taxes, decrease taxes, well, what does decreased taxes do with aggregate demand? Some of you guys are gonna fall for this and go, oh, well, it's gotta go to 82 because it's the only line there. Oh no, a cut in taxes means you'll increase consumer spending, moving aggregate demand to the right. So don't think, oh, there's 2 lines, I gotta go from one to the other. No, it's not asking you that. And so if we look at that, the answer is aggregate demand will shift to the right because we're at 81, because I said we're at E1. Aggregate demand will shift to the right, causing an increase in the price level and an increase in real GDP. Yeah, so if we went ahead and said, all right, if we have A, D, what is wrong with me there? All right, if we have A, D, I don't know, let's call it 3. This is the shift we'll get. And what happens to price level? Price level goes up. What happens to output? It'll also increase. So there you go. The answer is echo. Any questions on that one? Make sense? All right, now we got a string of them from 63 to 67. Let's go ahead and cover those and wrap this bad boy up. All right, 63. So 63 says a collection and analysis of economic data sufficient to identify recession usually takes several months. Because of this, what kind of lag is it? Well, I think I called it discovery lag, but well, what word would mean discovery lag?
Recognition lag.
Recognition lag. We got to recognize it's happening. So discovery, recognition, those are the same things. So it's recognition lag. Some of those aren't even lags, but budgetary is not a lag, but implementation is the other ones. All right, so that's pretty just definition based on those lags. All right, 65. So 65 says the marginal propensity consumer is 0.8, or 0.80, 0.8, the same thing. And the federal government cuts spending, decreases spending by $200 billion. All right, right when you get to marginal propensity to consume, just go spending multiplier must be, all right, MPS is 0.2, 0.2 goes into 1 5 times, tax multiplier must be 4. So spending multiplier is 5, tax multiplier is 4. The government cuts spending by $200 billion. The income expenditure model would predict that GDP will decrease by, well, the change in spending is $200 billion, negative. Multiply that by, well, since it's spending, the spending multiplier, which is 5. So it'd be, oh, okay. So GDP should be by $1 trillion, 1,000 billion. All right, well, that's $1 trillion, so D, because it's 200 times 5, 1,000. Okay? All right, 66. All right. When the economy expands, what is true? All right. So the correct answer here is income receipts and sales tax receipts will both rise. Receipts are how much money comes in from them. So don't think like, oh, I get more paper that shows I paid for something. No. It's how much comes in. So in the economy expands, it's sort of that automatic correctors idea. if the economy expands, more people are working, pay is rising, assets should be increasing in value, and well, since our income taxes and tax structure is based on a percentage, if you have more money, you pay more dollars in taxes. Remember, this isn't a progressive, regressive, proportional thing. It's if you make more dollars, you pay more dollars in taxes. So even if you had a flat tax, you're still paying more dollars in taxes. So it's like a tax increase. So that's the only way you need to think about it is income tax receipts and sales tax receipts will rise because income tax, your income goes up, sales tax, our demand's increasing. So every time things are bought, well, and since more things are being bought, more tax receipts, more money from taxes will come in. All good there? All right, and the last one, 67. 67 says the mechanism that causes government tax revenue, to rise and fall with the business cycle is known as, that's a good one. But it's a definition of what I just said. That's an automatic stabilizer. Remember, automatic stabilizers can be taxes, as in when the economy's good and people are buying more things and richer and working more and less unemployment, well, more money will come in from taxes. And if the economy's bad, lots of people are unemployed, well, they're poor, they pay less dollars in taxes, or they don't have a job and don't pay any taxes, or they don't buy as much, less money in sales taxes. So if we do that, that's just an automatic stabilizer. Remember, other automatic stabilizers would be a lot of social benefits like unemployment, like WIC, like Section 8, things that if you find yourself being poor, the government automatically pays you money if you qualify. Or if you find yourself richer, the government automatically cuts you off from it because, well, the economy's better and you're doing better. All right?
Are all of the automatic stabilizers also kind of examples of government transfers?
Usually the spending aspects, the tax part, is not, so she asked, do they all count as transfer payments? Well, the tax part, no, because it's taxes. Most of the other ones, yes. It doesn't have to be a transfer, it just typically is. Because unemployment, Section 8, WIC, all of those are transfers.
Are there any transfers that don't normally act as stabilizers?
Yes, Social Security, Medicare, those are for people who are old and retired. There's a question on here about that.
Yeah, I was just about to ask what the Social Security meant.
Social Security and Medicare, Social Security is payments for retirees. So you work enough, you pay enough into Social Security, you get a payment from the government that's tagged to inflation, so it is pegged. So when there's inflation, your Social Security payments go up. But it's tagged to inflation, which means you get that money when you're old. But here's the thing, when the economy's good, you get a payment. When the economy's bad, you get a payment. Medicare is health insurance for the elderly. So when the economy's good and you're old or qualify, you get health insurance. And when the economy's bad, you get health insurance. That's very different than unemployment. When the economy's good, you're not unemployed, you don't get it. But when the economy's bad, you do get it. So a way to kind of think of automatic stabilizers is they are contingent on how your kind of income and wealth aspect is. Does that help? All right. Any other questions since we've covered all the ones you guys wanted? All right. That was quick. That's all for me. And that's it. I hope everyone has a good day, and I'll see you guys on the quiz.